It's terrible. The amount of jargon that advertisers and SEO people are the worst.
I'll just touch base with
you. The amount of... I think one of the biggest things is belief. I was talking to someone I know who is just setting up as a freelancer. And I was trying to help her with her charging structure and what she was charging for a specific project. And she was going through this typical thing of questioning the value you're adding. So she was going through how much am I charging per hour? Am I charging too much? I feel a bit bad about it. And you just have to believe in yourself. You really do.
And looking back then, is there one mistake or one you think this is what I did wrong? Or is it a whole amalgamation of ups and mistakes along the way?
Many ups.
Welcome to Socially Unacceptable, the only podcast for marketers, PR professionals and entrepreneurs looking to grow their brand that actually celebrates the marketing mistakes, mishaps and misfortunes. In every episode, we do our best to dive into the stories of renowned brands and expert marketers who've made mistakes and picked themselves back up from the bottom. We are doing our best to explore the failures that help them turn these brilliant marketers into the brilliant people and amazing people they are today. Every episode aims to bring you brilliant experts and actionable takeaways that you can apply immediately to your own marketing strategies. So if you enjoy the show, please do subscribe for us. You can find us at sociallyunacceptable.co.uk. That's sociallyunacceptable.co.uk and anywhere where you get your podcasts. In this week's episode, we have the brilliant freelance champion, self-proclaimed I might point out, Paul Sutton. Paul has been an independent digital marketing consultant since 2014, working in marketing comms for over 20 years. He was named CIPR Practitioner of the Year and PRCA Digital Journalist of the Year, and is also a regular commentator on social media for the likes of ITV, BBC News, Talk Radio and The Guardian. Since setting up independently, Paul has worked with a diverse range of consumer and B2B organisations, including Honda, McDonald's, AXA, Macmillan, Panasonic, Green King, Tarmac and many more. His specialisms include social media, PR, digital, SEO, and overall marketing strategy. And most importantly for me, podcasting. So I've known Paul for about 10 years. I've been following him on Twitter. I've been reading his blog. We've known each other digitally for a while, but this is the first time I've actually got to speak to him. So Will and I asked him some questions about his history, and he really opened up. So this episode is fascinating because Paul will take you through the world of podcasting for thought leadership purposes. He'll touch on tips for freelancing, and even better than that, he talks about his biggest up of his life, and it's an exclusive to Socially Unacceptable. He's never talked about this, and I have to say it is great. It's so nice and refreshing to hear someone candidly talk about one of their biggest ups. So enjoy this episode.
Welcome to Socially Unacceptable, from ups to fame, the marketing podcast that celebrates the professional mishaps, mistakes and misjudgments while delivering valuable marketing and life lessons in the time it takes you to eat your lunch.
Do you want to introduce yourself then and just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Of course. So my name is Paul Sutton. I am a digital marketing consultant. I've been working independently now for 9 years, coming up to 10 years it'll be next year, which is pretty mind-blowing actually. Prior to that I worked in agencies. So I worked in agencies for God knows how many years before that as kind of your in-house digital person, I guess. Originally I was in PR, and then I think we're going to talk this about today at some stage, but I left to join the e-commerce world and basically learned a hell of a lot, so that when I eventually went back to agency land, I had all these skills that no one else seemed to have. So it led me down this route of digital marketing, really, as it relates to comms as well, which is, there's a distinct difference, I think, the way advertising people and SEO people treat certain things like social, for example, and the way a comms person comes at social. So I have that comms head, if you like, and come at things from a comms angle. And yeah, it stood me in good stead so far. So, fingers crossed, another 10 years and I can retire.
So you, we've done a bit of digging on your CV, as
right.
which is our job.
Yep.
So
Okay.
Don't be fearful. So you started in PR about 2004, is that right? So was that kind of a traditional PR role, if you like?
Yeah. It would have been, I mean, going back further than that, I started out, my first ever job was in an investment management company working in the marketing department. It wasn't PR related, but in marketing. And after that, I joined a marketing agency, and I was there for about 5 years. But that role led down the PR route just by the nature of the sort of clients I had at that time. And from there on, went into sort of PR and PR agencies. So yeah, it's where I've kind of grown up and cut my teeth. Really, is PR agency land, I suppose.
And then you took a kind of a move to becoming a creative director. Is that right?
Yes. So within one of these agencies that I was working for, I can't remember the dates of this time, but I started getting involved in things like website design and things like, at that time, it was more about brochures and all that side of stuff because the internet was there, but it wasn't really huge at that time. And so I started moving in more of the creative director role in terms of that side of things. And then again, going back to the PR stuff, taking control over campaign ideas and the creative angles of that. So yeah, it all bled through. I was saying to someone else the other day, it's a very long, straight career path. You know, some people have very wiggly careers that go all over the place. Mine doesn't. It is a very linear career path. But within that, you're right, it's been PR, marketing, creative, digital. It's all wiggled around in that, if you like.
Yeah, because you've won PRCA Digital Journalist of the Year. You didn't include that in your introduction. I was letting you big yourself up. So you, obviously Digital Journalist of the Year. Is that for your podcast?
Yeah. It was, yes, absolutely. Yeah. And that was a couple of years ago I won that. And it's an award that I didn't enter either, which always means quite a lot.
Yeah, nice.
Because I won the Independent Consultant of the Year as well a couple of years before that, which was fantastic. Don't get me wrong. It was really great to win that. But that's an award that you enter. The Journalist of the Year one was an award given to me, which was, that was really nice because totally unexpected. And like you said, that was for the podcast as well.
So how did you find a difference between being a PR person and a creative director? Because I know the era, we're a similar age. I know the era you're talking about. I remember when the BBC website wasn't as interactive as it is today, just like you're saying there. So, and I got involved in web design as well, and I know your pain with, can you just move that image to there?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Is the answer to that. I'm out.
It's easy now, but then it wasn't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's much easier now with CMS. So how did you find the difference between being a creative director and somebody in PR, or was it just fairly straightforward?
For me, I would say it was quite straightforward. On the PR side of things, although that's where I started a lot of my career, I guess, the media relations side of things, which was very strong in those days, wasn't really of ever a great interest to me, even though I was doing it. I wouldn't say I ever had a passion for it, if you like. So to move towards the more creative side and the ideas side and doing other stuff was just something that interested me. So I found it quite a natural move.
Yeah, I remember the days of just here's a list, go into that room and ring every journalist on this national list. It's terrifying for every PR professional out there, whoever they are. Even if you I enjoy it, I'm good at it. I was good at it. I haven't done it since a long time ago. But the campaign stuff I can imagine is more fun. So why don't you tell us then? This is the bit that's quite interesting. So then you set up a luxury pet accessories business with your wife, a brand concept called, and you can tell us what it was called and what it was about.
On, no, you go for it.
It was called the Pet Extraordinaria.
Extraordinarium.
I can't even say that. Extraordinarium.
Good, yeah.
And imagine spelling that on a website. www.petextraordinarium.co.uk. Is that the first problem?
Well, do you know what? It wasn't a problem, and the reason it wasn't the concept behind the thing was it was very brand led. My background, like we talked about, was in creative and branding and stuff, and we had this concept. I don't know where this name came from. Just brainstorming weird stuff because we wanted something that was weird. The fact that key people can't pronounce it or couldn't pronounce it was never really an issue because if you think about websites, you enter something into a URL maybe, or you click a link. You don't necessarily need to be able to pronounce the word you're typing in, which I know sounds weird, but it was fine. It was never an issue. But yeah, this whole concept came from. So at the time, I was working in an agency in this sort of creative role, and my wife was made redundant. And
what did your wife do?
She was actually at the same agency, but in a different department. So she was running events for that agency.
Right. Okay.
So like business awards and that sort of stuff. She was in control of putting those things in. And she was very good at it, but there wasn't enough ongoing business to support her role.
Happy anniversary, by the way.
Thank you very much. 15 years. Wow.
Yeah.
And so she was made redundant, and we just decided that we wanted to do something for ourselves. It was that simple. And she was and still is obsessed with animals. And, over the course of, 2 or 3 months, we talked around this thing and decided just to go for it. Which was, it was a bit of a weird move in a way, given that I'd worked in marketing departments and agencies all my life.
Yeah.
And then running this pet accessories business.
So what sort of stuff did you sell, and how did you set it up? Tell us a bit about what it was. Was it small rabbits, or was it big?
It was
elephant saddles. What was it?
Yeah, it was your mainstream pets.
Okay.
So we focused on cats and dogs and rabbits because we had rabbits, and we knew that there was this market out there for rabbit stuff. But the idea behind it was that the products we would sell were not the sort of tat that you find in a standard pet shop. Now, this is 15, 20 years ago. There was the odd boutique, if we want to call it that word, pet business around selling quite expensive stuff. And we wanted to be somewhere in the middle. We didn't want to be this cheap rubbish that you find on the high street. We didn't want to be super expensive because, there seemed like a small market. So we kind of went for the middle ground. But everything we sold was stuff that was it might be a cat bowl, but it was designed. It looked good to have in your house. That was the idea, is that everything we would sell would be stuff that you would be happy to have in your house. That was the sort of concept behind it.
Okay.
And that ranged from, dog bowls to cat collars to rabbit toys that were actually natural stuff, not cheap plastic stuff. And, it was a big ranging thing. And again, going back to the concept was a high street store, but something that was more akin to, the way you might walk into a Next, for example. Nicely laid out shop, pleasant to be in, not your crowded, smelly pet shop, which still exists today, most of those places, don't they? So it was a different concept to anything that we could find out there.
Is this online purely, or is it in the real world?
To start with, it was real world. It was a bricks and mortar store.
Right.
And maybe we'll come on to this. It didn't really work. The first problem we had or encountered was, I think we chose a bad place.
Location.
Location, yeah, right. Absolutely. It was in a town called Wallingford, which is in Oxfordshire. Which has a lot of independent stores. So we thought it'd be ideal for this sort of thing. But over the course of, say, 6 months, it became very apparent that footfall on high streets was falling down, quite badly. And at this time as well, another thing that went wrong, but the timing couldn't have been worse because this just preempted the financial crash of 2008. And so the country was going through this real upheaval at that time financially. And there's us pops up with this very different thing that people have to sort of get their head around a bit. And a cat bowl that, whereas you could buy a plastic cat bowl for £2 in your local pet shop, you might come to us and it'd be, 15 quid or 20 quid. And whilst that isn't a lot of money, it is if you just want a cat bowl. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there were multiple things that went on with it. But yeah, it was originally, back to your point, a bricks and mortar store.
And you obviously had secure jobs, or you did anyway. And then, so at what point, you were obviously planning it. At what point did you kind of quit and think, right, we're going all in on this? Or did you have a bit of an overlap period?
Nope, we just went all in on it.
I love it.
I don't remember the exact dates. My wife was made redundant in, let's say, September. I don't know, September, October time. And I quit that job early December so that we would have a clean break in the new year. So we kind of worked our way around it for 2 or 3 months. And we'd been sort of playing with ideas before that. But so 2 or 3 months, quit my job, into this thing.
Wow.
It was,
okay.
yeah, clean break.
And that was you stood straight behind the counter with the little tabard on, taking money over the register.
Yeah, it was, absolutely.
Wow.
It was the two of us.
That's exciting, though, right? That's really exciting. Setting up your own business, bricks and mortar, totally different offer.
Yeah.
It sounds like quite boutiquey. Is that fair?
Absolutely. Boutique is the word. It's difficult when you're talking about pets because it sounds a bit poncy, doesn't it? But boutique is the word. It was boutique-y rather than a boutique.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, going back to the original concept was that this would be the first of a number of stores. It wasn't ever supposed to be just one standalone store. We knew that for the first year, it would be Michelle and I, like you said, standing behind the counter, doing everything. We'd have to do everything ourselves because we couldn't afford to hire people. And so we went in with our eyes open on that front. But the intention was that within maybe a year, we'd have opened a second store somewhere, at which point we would be able to employ people to do the standing behind the counter stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
And was it self-funded, or did you have investment?
It was self-funded. We took out a business loan to fund parts of it, which came back to bite us in the butt later. But so we had a business loan, but other than that, purely self-funded. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, had we had investment at that time, maybe it would have gone further. Actually, it was, looking back, we were seriously underfunded in what we could do with it and how far we could take it with the money we had. Just not enough, undercapitalized.
So at what point did you kind of realise the bricks and mortar store wasn't working? Because knowing when to quit is really important, isn't it?
Yeah.
And to add to that, was it not working? And did you launch a digital offer because of your background in digital, or did you not? Did you just focus on face-to-face stuff?
So I would say we kind of realised that actually the store wasn't going to be what we hoped pretty quickly, within 6 months, I would say. And from 6 months onwards, I wouldn't say planning an exit from it, but were aware that we might have to exit it. Which sounds like way too early to be thinking that stuff, but to your point, why continue to do something if you know it's not working? That's just insane. So during that time, yes, then we set up a website to sell e-commerce. So for a while, I would say I don't know the exact times, but maybe for 3, 4, 5 months perhaps, we were building the website and having the store as well. So we were running both together. Knowing that if we had to quit the store, if we had to shut that down, we would then at least have a website there to put some money behind it and make work really well.
Yeah, because you'd have the infrastructure, the orders, all that stuff. You could just move it
rather
digital.
than having to start from scratch.
Exactly,
Absolutely.
yeah. The experience.
So family business, self-funded business in the context of the global financial crisis.
Good timing.
What was your state of mind like after kind of 6 to 12 months? It must have been enormously stressful for you guys as you kind of realised it wasn't working.
I don't even like to think back to how stressful that time was. We opened the store maybe February, March of whatever year it was. And like I said, after sort of 6 months, we're starting to think this just isn't going to work. We don't know what to do to attract more people. We're not getting enough people in the door. So, that the last quarter of that year was preparing to shut this thing down, really, and building the website as well. But yeah, the amount of stress that caused, and leading up to Christmas as well. Now, at that time, we didn't have any kids. So there wasn't the stress of, oh my God, we've got to buy kids' Christmas presents and all that. But that year, actually, at Christmas, we set ourselves tiny little budgets of like 20 quid each. You can buy each other a present, but it's got to be 20 quid. It was that sort of stuff. And I do remember, actually, in that last quarter, before we shut the shop down, there was the odd week where we literally had 30 quid to buy groceries and stuff for the week for the two of us. And that was it.
Hard.
It was tough. It was really tough. We went through a tough patch in the time before we closed that down. And then once we decided to close it, we had to try and negotiate our way out of the lease with the landlord, who was having not a lot of it.
Standard landlord.
Yeah. And then we had the pressure of this bank loan as well, which, we knew we were going to have to pay back. Trying to build the website business. And so the stress of it wasn't just leading up in that last quarter and leading to the close of the store. That carried on, I would say, probably for the whole time we ran that business, which would have been another 2 years, was stressful financially because we had this bank loan. And we knew that we couldn't just walk away from that,
Yeah, it's tough because so when you got out of it, did you feel? We've spoken to a few people about it, and it's somebody that got investment, and he was exactly the same thing with what were you saying there, like the pressure of borrowing money off somebody. Yeah. But literally, as soon as he did it, he said the day after, one of the investors called him and said, "Right, you've done it now. You fucked up, right. But you've taken it on the it's failed. You failed. You can use that to learn. Nothing's finished." He said he felt a massive sense of relief just from that one phone call. So. The bank manager won't do that, though, will they?
No, God, I wish I'd had that phone call. I really do, because, looking back now, I learned so much in that, and I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now, and wouldn't have won awards for it and all that sort of stuff if we hadn't done that business. But it's difficult. If I was to go back and say, would I change that? I don't know what the answer is.
That's interesting.
Because the amount of stress and financial pressure that we felt for, like I said, not just the time of running that business and running a failed business, which was failing slowly. It wasn't just even died. It failed slowly over the course of 2 or 3 years. But it took then, once we came out of it, once we realized the business itself was failing, not just the store, but a couple of years later. So we done our very best to build this website, and it was fine. It was going okay, but it was never. We didn't have, like I said, we were undercapitalized. We didn't have the funds to invest into marketing it properly in order to scale it enough. So we were making a living from it, but it was kind of scratching a living. Really, it wasn't. It never reached the heights that we thought it would, and we just couldn't see a way of it doing that because we didn't have the capital behind us. And I guess when we eventually decided, okay, enough's enough, we've got to close this down. You're right, the bank manager's straight on you. And we had to, basically, there was a time where we could have lost the house. Because awful. The bank manager was calling in the loan. Now, whether they'd have actually ever pressed the button to make us lose our house, I don't know. But living under that pressure where you think, we've got this money to pay back, which we do not have. It wasn't a huge amount. I think it was about 20 grand. But, that is a lot. When you have got nothing, 20 grand is, might as well have been $1 million, to be honest. But we eventually, basically, we had to take a loan from my mum and dad to pay the bank back. And then pay the loan back slowly to my mum and dad over the course of, 3 or 4 years. So if you take that as a whole, between setting up the business, first 6 months were fine, and then we realised this ain't as good as it should be. So 6 months in the shop, 2 years running it further, and then another 3 or 4 years on top of that. You're probably talking the best part of 6 years of instability, let's put it that way, and a lot of pressure. We even had to, we were engaged and we were due to get married one year while we were running this business. Couldn't afford to. We had to cancel the wedding because we couldn't afford to get married.
A good tester for your relationship, though.
Yeah, I guess. We're a super strong team, and we always have been. And you would think, you're right, if it's going to fail, it would fail at that sort of time.
Yeah.
And I guess during that time as well, we had, so we eventually did get married, and we had a kid a year later, our first child a year later. And that's all in this period of financial stress. So you're right. All of that together, you think, well, we must be quite strong to have withstood that.
So why was there one thing that made you pull the plug, or did it just get to the point when you thought this isn't working? And could you and should you have done that earlier, do you think?
Interesting question. I don't think there was one point. It was a slow creeping realization that no matter the ideas we had and no matter my background and learning all this digital stuff, like I said, we didn't have the money to scale it. We just didn't. And I then had to go back to working 3 days a week in an agency. So I was doing both. My wife had a young child. Well, I had a young child as well, but she technically gave birth to her.
We'll cut that bit.
A nice edit.
So, all of those things together was just this dawning that we can't go on like this forever. Something's got to change. So eventually we just came to the decision that we've got to move on. We've got to put this behind us.
And looking back then, is there one mistake or one fuck up you think this is what I did wrong, or is it a whole amalgamation of fuck ups and mistakes along the way?
Many fuck ups. Aside from the fact that no one could say the name, I think the first mistake was the location we chose for the store. But again, I say that, we could have gone for, let's say, Oxford Centre, but it would have cost us a fortune in rent, so probably couldn't have done it anyway. But location was the first one. Undercapitalisation, didn't anticipate the amount of money that we would need, and I have to say, fuck up on my part was that I wasted a lot of the money we did have on advertising. At that time, print advertising in cat magazines and dog magazines and rabbit magazines, which kind of makes sense, but probably put too much into that, too much advertising money in that arguably we couldn't have afforded. Our ads were great. Well, I loved them. They were from a very, again, like I said, this was a brand-led thing.
Yeah.
So again, you look through a dog magazine and all the ads are pretty poor quality, picture of a product, dog food with just standard rubbish. And our ads looked amazing. They didn't feature products as such. It was all brand led about this boutique thing. You need to go and see it, sort of thing. I'm not sure that works in that industry. Again,
Too disruptive.
we tried it, didn't work. Move on.
Yeah.
But the question about whether we should have canned it sooner. I mean, the logical answer to that is yes, absolutely. Probably a year before we did. But you've built, or you're trying to build something. The last thing you want to do is admit defeat and admit you failed, because that's the overriding sense that I had about that for years. I can talk about it now.
Yeah.
But for years and years, I had this big sense of failure about it.
Personal
like
failure.
Really? Personal
There's
failure.
nothing wrong with that, though. We learn
There's
through
not.
failure. That's the whole point, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I totally agree with you now. But at that time, it didn't feel like that at all.
Yeah.
It just felt this real sense of failure about. I felt like I'd let the family down as much as anything. And again, this is part of me. I take things on me.
Yeah.
Now, bearing in mind, I'm in this with Michelle as well, so it's equally as her. But I took it on me. And for years and years, I used to say, I sold the business. We exited the business, which is not untrue, but it's not true anyway because we didn't make any money on it. So, I would never admit. I wouldn't have admitted to being a failure.
Well, thanks for sharing it, because it's very honest and really interesting to hear. Because a lot of people we've interviewed, probably. I mean, we're not as black belt in this area as you are, but we've interviewed a fair few people, and some people are candid, and some people are quite. They don't want to really. And you've just opened up there, and it's fascinating to hear a personal story and account of, especially of bricks and mortar from a digital. Because I was putting you down as a digital, e-commerce PR. I was waiting for you to tell me all about the e-commerce side of it, and actually, it was more than bricks and mortar side of it that you felt location. That's why the show's called Location. It is the key thing, isn't it? If you get it right, but you're right. If you have a perfect location, it costs money, and you need funding to start.
But then, I mean,
and you're right. When you say you think of me as like a digital person, that's where it comes from, though, because Before that, yes, I'd been doing creative work, but the internet, e-commerce was around, but it hasn't really taken off at that time. After that, I was all in with the digital stuff.
Yeah.
So, it changed me in that way for the better. And that's why I said, and you're talking about learning from failure. That's exactly what happened. But that was coupled with this horrible sense of failure,
And can you both still love pets?
Yeah, we do. We've had, even since then, we've had countless rabbits. We've got a dog. We've had cats.
Yeah.
We've got chickens. So yes, that's not impacted that.
Okay, good.
And no regrets then. I mean, the toughest of possible times, personally, for your marriage, for your finances.
Yeah.
No regrets.
Don't know the answer to that question. I honestly don't. Like I said, if I could go back and change it, would I? I don't know. In theory, if I could go back and change it, we wouldn't have gone through all that stress and financial pressure. It wouldn't have taken us years to get out of a financial hole. But would I be doing what I am now if I hadn't made that change in career at that time? Who knows? Possibly not. So I don't know.
Okay, so let's move on to the next stage then. So then the business. So then what did you do then? The business shut down. You went and kicked something and then came back and went, right, I've got to start my career again. Where am I going to go?
Yeah.
What did you do?
So, as I said, I'd started working part-time for a PR agency. And I think, I don't remember 100%, but I think I moved up to full-time, I think. But that kind of went tits up as well.
Why is that?
I started working at this agency, and the agency had a very, very strong-minded boss. The MD, big personality, knew what she wanted, was not shying telling people what she wanted and how she wanted it done.
I can't relate to that.
And for the first few months, absolutely fine. Got on with her like a house on fire. This was in a sort of creative director role and helping out on the bits of digital and stuff. Was going really well. And then I took paternity leave for 2 weeks, legally entitled to paternity leave.
Yeah.
Came back and it was like I'd taken a dump on a office floor or something. She just...
There's a quote.
The change in attitude was absolutely unbelievable. To this day, I don't know what happened in that 2 weeks, if anything happened, or whether she didn't like the fact that I was off for 2 weeks on paternity leave. I don't know.
Right.
But from then on, her and my relationship just deteriorated rapidly.
Bit weird that, isn't it? Because paternity, you're entitled to take it. It's part of... it's a good time.
I know.
You only get those 2 weeks of your life with your child once.
Yep.
Like, why would you be upset about that? I don't know. And like I said, I don't know that was the case. But there was something different when I came back from those 2 weeks. I don't know what it was. But anyway, our relationship then deteriorated. And basically, I think it was about 4, 5, maybe 6 months after I came back, I just quit the place without another job in hand. And bearing in mind what I've just said about the financial pressures we were under, to then have to feel like I needed to quit a job without having something else to go to tells you perhaps how bad it had got. The tipping point was, actually, it was one evening, I was at home and an email pinged, and it was an email from the boss, supposedly to someone else, but she'd accidentally put me as the recipient. Basically, this is good.
Record email.
This is good.
Brilliant, huh?
Go on. What did she say? This is gold.
I don't remember the wording, but it was around me being super arrogant, and I can't remember what else. But it wasn't a long, but it was enough to make me go, for fuck's sake, come on.
We've all done that, haven't we, Chris? Send the wrong email to the wrong person.
Yeah.
Recall.
We have all. But she hadn't realised, which was brilliant. So I'd already been thinking about leaving because it just got to this, really bad relationship. So, I talked to Michelle about it and we were like, okay, quit. So the next day, I printed off this email and the next day went into the office and put it on her desk. And basically said, I'm sorry, but I'm leaving. I'm not putting up with this anymore. And her attitude, funnily enough, was not one of, oh, I'm really sorry, that shouldn't have gone to you. It was, well, if we got on better, it would be a problem, would it? And I was like, are you serious? So anyway, so left that job. So
did you just walk? Did you just walk?
From bad to worse.
Did you just walk at that point, or did you have to do the whole? Oh, I've got to be here for 3 months because I'm a creative director. Like, that's so awkward. No, here's your email. See you in 3 months. I'll just be sat opposite you over there.
Yes, I think I had a month's notice on my contract.
Okay,
which she made me work out.
Of course you did.
So I'm going to the office, and it's an office of maybe 15, 20 people, I think, at that time, maybe 20, something like that. But being in the same office.
Tumbleweed every day.
Just bizarre.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Yeah,
so
absolutely bizarre.
One of my questions was going to be what kind of provoked you to become a sole trader and a consultant, and you've just answered that brilliantly. So thank you.
Yeah. So
the simple life now. No staff. Just
Well, I mean, at that time, you think actually, that wasn't the time I did go independent. Or maybe I should have, but. From there, I went to work for another agency, which was actually, funny enough, it was the agency I worked with prior to setting up the e-commerce business.
Right.
So I went back to that company. It was just a timing thing. They were looking for someone in digital to head up, and bring on their digital people, help train in-house. Social media was really coming to the fore at that time, and they didn't have any skill in that, so they wanted someone who knew this side of things in SEO. So I went in there as the digital guy, basically.
So and now you're freelance now, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
How long have you been freelance?
9 years.
Okay, so the thing about being freelance, I was freelance for I can't remember how many years, but I was freelance for a while. Earned better money than I'd ever earned at an agency, and then nearly like I was literally on holiday somewhere, the only holiday, and I was doing meetings on holiday. I was calling people, trying to deal with client scenarios. I was making better money, but I was burnt out even on holiday. So how have you found balancing freelance? Because it's not just about delivering the work anymore. It's about winning the work, delivering the work, being around, doing podcasts with two hilarious individuals from Leeds, that sort of thing. How do you balance it?
I've never really had a problem with this, but I know others do, and especially when you're new to freelancing. I think when I first set up, it takes a while to get out of the being employed mindset for a start. So when I was first working, I would be thinking, okay, my working time is 9 to 5, and I sit down at my desk, I do a 9 to 5 day, and then I have my evenings myself, like you do when you're employed. It took me quite a long time to break out of that habit. I was quite fortunate. Well, not fortunate, it was by design. When I decided to go freelance, I negotiated a contract with an agency of someone I knew who ran this agency. And they were looking for digital support. So I managed to negotiate it was either 2.5 or 3 days a week as a freelancer for them, as a contracted freelancer. And that gave me the security to be able to go freelance, because now suddenly I'm working 2.5, 3 days a week, which gives me the same money effectively that I was earning when I was employed, but with 2 days a week where I can start developing what I want to do. I can develop my business and get other clients and do that sort of stuff. So that contract lasted, I think, a good couple of years, and it really set me up. It really set me going, because I didn't have that worry about where's the next business coming from. But back to your point, I think that's probably why it took me such a long time to break out of that being employed mindset, because I sort of was still employed a bit in a way. But balancing it now, I mean, like I said, I've been doing this 9 years now, so I'm so used to it. Balancing it, I have no problem with it in terms of if I've got a project on that let's say I sit down tomorrow and I want to work on a project, but I sit down and my mind is just not in it. And I try and I can't do it. I have no problem then going, right, I'm binning off today or this morning and I'm going to go out and do something else, knowing full well that I'll have to pick that time up somewhere else, which might be an evening or a weekend, or maybe I can cram it into next week, whatever, or get up early. But that balance is there. I don't know. I work when I need to and when I can, but if I can't work or don't need to work, then I don't. But it did take a long time to learn.
What, if you could give somebody, so there'll be people out here listening to this, marketers, comms people, if they want to go freelance, what's your top 3 tips for going freelance?
Cool, blimey, that's a big question. I think one of the biggest things is belief. I was talking to someone I know just last week, actually, who is just setting up as a freelancer. And I was trying to help her with her charging structure and what she was charging for a specific project. And she was going through this typical thing of questioning the value you're adding. So she was going through how much am I charging per hour? Is that enough per hour? You know, am I charging too much? I feel a bit bad about it. And you just have to believe in yourself. You really do. I've just started, if I may do a plug here, I've just started a community for freelancers called The Hive, which is thehive.rocks, everybody. But we were having a conversation yesterday about ego, and I put the question to the group about whether you need an ego to be or how much of an ego you need to be a freelancer, because you've got to believe in yourself.
Yeah.
If you don't, no one else is gonna, you know. You haven't got a team leader sat up there saying, "Oh, you're great, you know, just keep going at it." If you don't do it, no one's helping you. So you have to have a bit of, I don't know if ego is the right word, self-esteem, self-confidence, whatever. You can develop that, but you have to have it. And one of the biggest things is trust your gut. Anyone who is starting out as a freelancer, trust your gut, what you think. The number of times over the years, again, this is the thing I've come to, I think, is that now I listen to my inner voice all the time. If I've got a potential client and there's something not quite right about it, and I can't put my finger on it, more than often than not, I will turn that down, even if I don't know why I'm turning it down, because it doesn't feel right. And it's not something you can explain to anyone. No. Maybe you guys have it with clients. I don't know.
I do. I have that. I have that quite regularly.
Gut, you know?
Yeah. It's like an intuition, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. Absolutely. And if you think about it, the times you haven't followed that intuition probably haven't worked out that well.
No, it kicks you in the balls.
It does.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then you go, why? I knew.
Another thing I guess I would say is that this is a difficult one, actually, and maybe this is too personal to me, but after a while, you learn to accept that if you're having a quiet month or a quiet couple of months, don't stress about it too much. As long as you keep doing what you're doing in terms of putting yourself out there and, you know, improving your website or whatever you're doing, as long as you're doing stuff, the work will come. And I know it's difficult when you're starting out, but it's this trust thing. I've learned that I should touch wood heavily on this. My year so far has been pretty awful. Don't know why. It's probably the economy, you know, things going on. And the last 4 or 5 months of my business have been bloody terrible. But I'm not sitting here panicking about it yet. This is probably the worst patch I've ever had in 9 years. But I still have the belief that the work will come at some stage.
So can everyone send a £10 donation to paulsutton.com and he'll be delighted.
Absolutely.
If you enjoyed this interview.
So that's some good advice, I think, for freelancers. So looking at the types of clients you work with then. So something you talk about a lot is the need to kind of demystify digital bullshit, I think was the phrase you used.
Yes.
So
I like that. Yeah.
Is digital particularly bad for bullshit? You know, what are we talking here?
It's terrible. The amount of jargon that advertisers and SEO people are the worst.
I'll just touch base with you.
The amount of the amount of crap that is used to, I don't know whether it's used on purpose to cloud things or whether it's just the language that's grown up around certain industries or sectors, that your everyday client doesn't know what the hell people are talking about. It's awful. And the sorts of clients I tend to get really, really appreciate straight talking. If you think something's crap, I say it's crap. I mean, I'm a bit better than that, but you know what I mean? And what I don't do, I try and translate everything I do into plain English. So that if, you know, I've seen, for example, with SEO, if I've seen SEO reports from SEO agencies that are 20 pages long, full of stats and all sorts of stuff, and the client hasn't got a faintest idea what this is saying. So if I'm doing an SEO report, it tends to be 2 or 3 pages of the key stats and then an analysis, which is just talking in English. And it's just, it's an example of, like you said, it demystifying and getting around all the bullshit that is out there, because there's so much of it. It's awful.
Acronym city, isn't it? There's acronyms for
Yeah,
absolutely
absolutely.
everything.
Absolutely.
Professional
Yeah.
storytellers. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, that's my
We're telling stories.
When did that become a thing? Everyone referring to themselves as storytellers.
It's now moved from business sales to business growth hackers, isn't it? Now it's biohacking. That's another one. There's a lot of this terminology around technology, and social media was a big one, and now it's AI. We've covered that quite a lot with Andrew Bruce Smith, and we had Wads, who I know is on your show. So can we talk a bit about your? I mean, we've not talked about. I mean, the freelance side of things. You're talking about, obviously, you're available for work, which is great. Did you start the podcast? So your podcast, are the plug for the podcast, because it's very good. It's called Digital Download. I've been listening for years. You've been doing it since 2018, was it, or something?
Yeah, 5 years. Yeah.
So you saw the pandemic coming, and you started 3 years before that, which is brilliant. That's real, vision.
That's foresight, isn't it?
Yeah. So why did you start it? And what have you found about doing it? Tell us a bit about the podcast.
I started it because people kept saying to me, you need to have a podcast. It's that simple. I've been blogging for maybe 10 years, I would say. It had been about 10 years. I've been blogging steadily all that time. And people kept saying to me, you should have a podcast, because podcasting was starting to really take off around this sort of time, 2017, 2018. But no one in the marketing comms, well, no, I say no one. There were very few marketing comms type podcasts around at that time, at least good ones anyway. People were having a go, doing 1 episode, 3 episodes and canning it, that sort of thing. So there was an opportunity there. I had put it off for at least 6 months, maybe a year, because I knew nothing about podcasting, nothing whatsoever. Didn't know how to record a podcast, let alone go through the process of editing and publishing and all that stuff. And eventually, as a result of being hounded about it, I just thought I should do it because I need to learn this stuff. And I'm a firm believer that the best way of learning something is to do it. And if I screwed it up, fine, no problem. Okay. So I decided, okay, I'm going to do 1 season of this podcast.
How many episodes is that?
See how I go with it. It was going to be, I think it was maybe 10 episodes I lined up. And it was a chance to firstly see whether I liked doing it. Secondly, see whether there would be any interest in this whatsoever. So therefore, whether it had potential for me as a helping me with my business. And then thirdly, it was just a chance to learn how this stuff. I learned, I didn't go any courses or anything. I learned how to use Audacity in order to edit a podcast together and how to plug it into hosting platforms and all this sort of stuff. I just learned how to do it. And that was, 5 years ago. And it's just gone from strength to strength, which, it's pretty amazing that it's still going after 5 years. I've now done well over 100 episodes. It's just come back after an entire year.
I was going to say, you've been doing it 5 years, but one of those years you haven't been doing it.
Not 5 years.
Yeah, exactly.
But so it got to last summer and at start of last summer. And I was going to have a break anyway, because you might find this out once you started doing them every week or two. There comes a point where you just need a bit of a break from it. So I was going to have a break over the summer, and I was intending on coming back with a new season in September. September passed, October passed, November passed. I had a lot of stuff going on personally with which I won't go into, but it was causing a lot of stress. And my mum and dad were ill. A lot of family stuff going on. Then early this year, my dad died. And it was just all of this stuff. And I just didn't want to get back to doing the podcast.
Yeah.
At that time, I would have thought, if you'd have said to me, no, you're going to pick this up again in July or when I started doing it, I'd have gone, nah, I'm done. But again, people started asking me, where's the podcast gone? How come? And I was like, do you know what? I really should get back to doing it, because I'd noticed as well, saying I'm having a bad year, this is only a correlation thing. I can't attribute causation to it, but I believe there's a correlation between me not doing the podcast for a year and business drying up a bit.
But you say that because I was going to say you had a year's break. Sorry.
Yeah.
Did your downloads continue going up because your digital, let's say, digital media space was already there? So you had 90 in the can or whatever. They're still sat there, building away like blog posts, like indexing on all the podcast channels.
Absolutely.
So you would think you'd still get inquiries and business from the podcast, right?
Possibly. I mean, I don't know the answer to that, but you're right. Just because I wasn't recording new episodes doesn't mean that people weren't listening to old episodes. But when you stop publishing new episodes, your listenership does go down. I mean, quite drastically as well. It's not that it's not being listened to, but you're not doing anything to promote it unless you continue promoting old episodes, obviously. And not putting out new episodes means that the people who listen regularly aren't coming back to you and talking to people about it. And that's the way podcasting works. It's, you get introduced to people who, from sort of word of mouth, someone will say to someone, have you listened to this podcast? They'll listen to it, come back, listen to 4 or 5 episodes, and then come to you and say, I've been listening to a few episodes. We've got this project on, that sort of thing.
Well, on that, actually, I was going to ask you, why do you do it? When we have a lot of conversations with our clients and everyone has different objectives for doing a podcast, what are the benefits as an individual or as a business of doing a podcast?
There are several, I think. I mean, from a business perspective, I would say it's the best thing I've ever done for my business.
Wow.
And that is having gone back. Like I said, I've been blogging for 10 years. I used to use Twitter like relentlessly all the time. And for the first probably 3 or 4 years of my business, it was the blog and Twitter that kept things, getting me leads. But the podcasting kind of took things to a whole new level where, like I said, people talk about a podcast and they refer you on to other people to listen to the podcast, which then leads to business. So I can't put a... Go on, sorry.
Sorry, so you're talking lead generation as a big benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't put a figure on it, a financial figure, but I know for a fact I've had many clients who have come to me having listened to the podcast. So it's tens of thousands of pounds of financial value.
Okay.
From a personal level, I just love doing it. It's great to talk to people and get introduced to people, and it's something I enjoy doing.
So I remember. Am I remembering this rightly? So I remember that you shared Twitter or LinkedIn somewhere because I've followed you for years, and it said, was it 70,000 downloads or something? How many? Or was it 10,000 downloads? Have I over exaggerated it?
It's around about. I don't know the figure now. Maybe. See, this is it. I don't keep up with my stats nowadays. I should do, but it's around about 50,000, I think.
Which is amazing,
Something
isn't
like
it? 50,000 people have spent an hour with you, listening to you and your saxophone.
And this is it with podcasting. People listen to podcasts when they're out walking the dog or doing the dishes, or it's dead time when you're doing something else, and they will spend an hour or half an hour, however long your episode, they will listen to the entire thing. If you write a blog post, people will skim read it. Even if you write 1,000 words, they're going to read 100 words of that.
Yeah.
And spend 1 minute with your content. With a podcast, they spend half an hour or an hour with your content. I know nothing else does that.
And
nothing.
So you had 50,000 downloads. You've got 50,000 downloads of your podcast, say. What was the biggest game changer to get in downloads for you? When did you see the hockey stick of growth on your, because having started a podcast, we've seen slow growth and then gradual growth, and now it's picking up every month. But when did you see the hockey stick, and what was the tactic that did that? You know,
if I'm honest, I don't think there has been that hockey stick moment, if you like. What I have seen, again, I have to skip the last year and go back a year, but up until a year ago, what I was seeing was steady growth. I've tried all sorts of different tactics in terms of making it grow. You know, I've got an email list. I've tried advertising. I've used Facebook advertising and LinkedIn advertising and all sorts of things. I wouldn't say there is one tactic that suddenly made it take off. It's been a consistent growth through that sort of 3-4 year period, which I personally have been very happy with. Other people would look at that and go, hang on a minute, it hasn't just rocketed, you know?
So I'm curious, we've talked about podcasting from an individual perspective so far. Should companies be podcasting as well? And if so, how can, you know, what kind of benefits can a company get from doing that?
I'm a firm believer in podcasting, full stop. And I do actually help a couple of companies with their podcast in terms of production and editing and that sort of stuff. The key to it, to me, is to do something that is a bit different. And by that, I mean not sounding like every other podcast out there. If you're going to do a company podcast, it's got to have an angle to it, or, you know, it's got to have something different about it. Why should I choose your company podcast over the 5 others from your main competitors? So it's got to have life, I suppose. I don't know how to define that word, but I see a lot of podcasts, and these are the ones that generally last 5 or 10 episodes, and then you never see them again. And there's a ton of them out there, but it's because they've not put any thought to production. Like you guys, right? I've put this together, but you've gone all in on production values.
Yeah.
So it looks good. It sounds good. You've thought about the niche, if you like, of what you want to talk about. So you've thought about, you haven't just bought a microphone, started chatting to people with shit quality sound in dull tones. And, you know, there's so many of those things out there. If you're going to do that, don't bother, you know. But if as a company you're prepared to invest a bit of time and effort into thinking about those things and investing a bit of time and money into it, then absolutely. Because the chances of your competitors doing that are probably quite small.
And what kind of benefits can businesses expect to get from a podcast? Is it similar to an individual, you know, brand awareness, lead gen, or is there other benefits as well?
I think they're the main things. I think a lot of it is brand awareness, and it's to do with reputation. If you go back to PR, having a podcast is all about positioning, really. So if I'm listening to your podcast, I am getting a perspective of you.
Oh God!
You know, you as absolutely you. So you as an individual, but you as a company, I get a feeling for you, right? If I listen to you every week or 2 weeks, over time, I am far more likely, when I have a requirement for whatever it is you offer, to come to you than your competitors. I see podcasting as almost like warming up your audience. It's credibility building. It's, you know, it's all that sort of stuff, so that you're front of mind when I need something.
It's better for personality as well, like, because I've read.
Oh God, yeah.
You were a blogger, I was a blogger, and still do. And Stuart, I know lots of them. We've had some of them on the show, and some of them are going to come on the show. But I think podcasting provides that extra, as Twitter did. X provided some sort of personality to the wider, long, lengthy articles. Podcasting, video, it brings that extra level of personality and authenticity to it. So you get a feeling for that person. You think, good God, I couldn't work with Will Ockenden. Sadly, I've already signed a contract with him, so I've got to. But, you know, the people out there, they want more of this. Do you know what I mean? That's what you're talking about.
I totally agree with you. 100% agree with you. You know, you either decide you do or don't want to work with someone based on listening to podcasts. And more often than not, if you're doing a good job, it should be, I do want to work with you, you know?
Yeah. You've been on the show. Thanks for... Nice. You've got a brilliant podcast, by the way, because I have been listening to it for a long time.
Thank you.
If you were us, who was the next person you'd interview on this show to hear about their biggest fuck up?
Oh man,
Your ex-boss,
God.
perhaps.
Oh, that'd be good. That'd be
You know
brilliant.
what? Oh my God, can you imagine? I'd love that.
It'd be
Shall I give you a
cathartic.
name? Oh Christ, who would I invite? I'm trying to think. Actually, do you know what? Who I would invite? I would invite John Brown from Don't Cry Wolf. Do you know John or of John?
You've literally just interviewed him, haven't you?
Yes, absolutely. He's been on my podcast 2 or 3 times. He is one of the most erudite but funny and engaging people you will ever talk to. Seriously. I'd get him on the show next week if I could, if I was you.
Thank you so much for coming on, Paul,
Yeah, that
and
was
sharing
great.
it.
That was great. We
You're
let it.
very, very welcome.
Yeah, we kind of let it take its own direction, I think, and that was really good.
Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah, we were going to do a whole thing on social media strategy, but there's just not enough time.
We
It's like,
didn't even
we'll have to
chance
get
it,
you on.
did we?
We'll have to get you on some other time to talk about that.
Well, what a great conversation that was. I love the interviews when we don't just talk about strategy and we actually get into people's stories. It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, the candid guests are always the best. Like that. What a nice bloke as well. Paul's a really nice guy. Nice guy from communications, but has worked in both the SEO side, the creative side, as well as the PR side. But the real juice of today's interview, I think, with Paul was his candid. What are you laughing at?
Nothing.
Fucking hell.
Juice.
I fucking lost my flow now.
Start on the juice. Real juice of the episode.
I don't want to talk about your juice. But the real interesting bit for me was when he started talking about the business that he set up in Oxford, picking the location. That was a difficult decision. They picked it, but it wasn't quite right. I literally thought he was going to talk about being an e-commerce business, and that's why I thought the name, which was quite hard to say, and a pet. I'm gonna have to refer back to my notes now. The Pet Extraordinarium.
Extraordinarium, yeah. I
And
mean,
it was quite an extraordinarium story, wasn't it?
He highlighted a few mistakes along the way. I can't help thinking it was partly down to the global financial crash. I mean, what an unfortunate time to be launching the business. I mean, perhaps he would have lasted a bit longer or been more successful had he done it 5 or 10 years earlier. I'm not sure. It's hard to say.
I don't think anyone... Is there ever a good time to launch a business? Yeah. I mean, like, if you look at now, there's people out there probably thinking of launching businesses and they're going, oh my God, look, the economy is the worst it's ever been. 3 years ago, it was COVID. 2 years before that, it's Brexit. Honestly.
Well, some of the best businesses are launched. I mean, Microsoft, Apple, all launched in a recession. I think the first couple of years of prohibition were during a real dip in the economy. There's, it's not necessarily going to make your business fail. It's a combination of factors.
I say invest in a downturn because that's the time when everybody else is rescinding and pulling back. Invest. The economy's not doing as well. But for him, to be fair, and his wife, what a story. I mean, opening a bricks and mortar store, because I do get the feeling that with e-commerce you can set up a brand, you can get it running, you can keep going and going and going, and the audience can get bigger and bigger and bigger. When you're a location and you're fixed place in Oxford somewhere, you've only got you're restricted to how many people walk outside your store, aren't you? So it doesn't matter how brilliant your brand is or how much advertising you do. There's still only the certain amount of people who potentially are going to walk past your store. So it's a challenge.
And a self-funded business is fine if you're a service-based business. There's limited costs, you can work at home, but the initial outlay costs on a premises, on stock, must have been ruinously expensive. So you can see why he was struggling for funds after the sort of 6-month mark.
I also thought it was quite interesting about him talking about difficulty working with bosses. The paternity story was quite interesting. And then obviously when he touched on the beauty of podcasting and how it's changed his freelance career, because he had some great tips for freelance. It is challenging to work freelance and people out there working on their own, they'll know what I'm talking about. But the reasons behind the podcasting was really interesting as well. And, he's grown his podcast to 50,000 downloads. If we get there, blimey, we'll be delighted.
Yeah, it's great to speak to another podcasting advocate, isn't it? And he obviously rightly highlighted the fact that it's an incredibly effective content marketing technique, but it can and does lead to direct business as well if you get it right.
Yeah, exactly.
It was good to hear multiple fuck-ups as well, wasn't it? I think some of our guests would just talk around one. Really, he saw that he'd made mistake after mistake after mistake, but fascinating that he doesn't necessarily regret that period, and that's obviously led to where he is today.
Character building, I think, is what going through a tough period like that. I mean, anybody that's out and has a business and puts your house on the line, takes a loan out, you've got my full respect, because you have to be brave. Yeah, you have to be really brave to put your house on the line and risk your family and fortune and everything. And the fact that he's done that and learned from it, it must have helped him build. It's built his character, and he feels like he's a better marketer for that.
Yeah, and I think if anyone's listening and they've got a similar story of failure and lessons, and you're willing to talk to us in a really candid way about it, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, always willing to hear from you guys and what's going on. So yeah, as Will says, drop us an email or tweet us or whatever. Yeah, thank you everybody for listening this week to Socially Unacceptable. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel or subscribe to us, and you can find us on sociallyunacceptable.co.uk. And Will and I will see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you for listening to Socially Unacceptable. Please remember to subscribe to the podcast and leave us a 5-star review. Don't forget to follow us on social media on Instagram, TikTok and LinkedIn at Prohibition PR and Twitter at Socially UA. We would love to hear some of your career fuck-ups so we can share them on the show. For more information on the show, search Prohibition PR in your search engine and click on podcasts. Until next time, please keep pushing the boundaries and embracing the socially unacceptable.